That flight to Chicago became more than just a journey through stormy skies. It became a testament to the power of human connection. As predicted, the storm system intensified, making the lieutenant colonel's presence in the cockpit not just symbolic but crucial. His experience with difficult weather conditions helped guide the aircraft safely through turbulent skies, while below, the senior flight attendant demonstrated her own transformation through small but meaningful acts of kindness to every passenger. Word of what had happened spread quickly through the airline's ranks. Within weeks, the story reached the corporate offices not through viral videos or social media outrage, but through heartfelt letters from passengers who had witnessed the exchange. The airline's response wasn't just a generic statement. They took action. The senior flight attendant, deeply moved by her experience, volunteered to help develop a new training program focused on conscious inclusion. She shared her story openly, turning her moment of prejudice into a powerful teaching tool. "I learned that day," she would often say, "that our uniforms, badges, and positions mean nothing if we don't wear them with humanity." The elderly former flight attendant who had inspired the lieutenant colonel's career years ago was invited to speak at the airline's leadership conferences. Her simple act of kindness decades ago had created ripples that continued to touch lives. She and the lieutenant colonel began a mentorship program for young people interested in aviation and military service, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes start with a single conversation. As for the young journalist whose father had been rescued, he produced a documentary that went far beyond the airport incident. It traced the interconnected stories of service, sacrifice, and redemption that had brought everyone together that day. The documentary became a training tool not just for airlines, but for organizations worldwide dealing with diversity and conflict resolution. The lieutenant colonel's humanitarian mission in Chicago was a success, coordinating emergency responses that saved countless lives during the severe weather event. But perhaps more importantly, his example that day in the airport saved something equally precious. It saved hope in human dignity and the possibility of change. 6 months later, at a ceremony honoring exceptional airline staff, the senior flight attendant stood at a podium, wearing both her own wings and the pilot's wings given to her by the lieutenant colonel. She spoke about transformation, not as something that happens to us, but as something we choose, moment by moment. The lieutenant colonel sat in the audience, still humble, still leading by example. But the most profound impact wasn't in the grand gestures or public speeches. It was in the small moments that followed. Flight attendants taking extra time with nervous passengers, travelers showing more patience with airline staff, people choosing to see beyond their first impressions. The incident had reminded everyone that our everyday choices can ripple out to touch lives we may never meet. Today, if you fly through Kennedy International Airport, you might notice a small display case near one of the busy terminals. Inside are 3 sets of wings, a flight attendant's, a pilot's, and a military officer's, along with a simple plaque that reads, "Every journey begins with a choice to see the sky in each other's eyes." And that worn photograph, it found a home in the airline's training center, where it continues to tell its story of transformation, redemption, and the extraordinary power of choosing understanding over ignorance, dignity over division, and hope over hate. Because sometimes the most important journeys we take aren't measured in miles, but in the distance between who we are and who we choose to become. After all, in the end, we're all just fellow travelers on this remarkable journey called life, each carrying our own stories, each capable of transforming moments of conflict into constellations of connection. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to see beyond our own horizon to the shared sky that connects us all. The morning after the incident, as the neighborhood stirred to life, the children's story had already reached far beyond their San Francisco street. Local news vans lined the sidewalk, and reporters eagerly gathered around their now famous water stand. The kids, still processing the events of the previous day, found themselves thrust into an unexpected spotlight. Their parents, protective but proud, stood nearby, ensuring their children weren't overwhelmed by the sudden attention. What made this story particularly compelling wasn't just the viral video. It was the deeper narrative that began to emerge. These weren't just any kids trying to make pocket money. They had been saving up to help their mother, a hard-working single parent, afford tickets to a local science museum. Their entrepreneurial spirit wasn't born from mere childhood whimsy. It was rooted in love, responsibility, and the pure desire to contribute to their family's well-being. The community's response continued to evolve in remarkable ways. A retired small business owner who lived 3 blocks away arrived early that morning with a proper vendor cart, complete with an umbrella for shade. "I've had this in my garage for years," he explained, his eyes twinkling. "These kids deserve a proper setup." His gesture was just the beginning of what would become a cascade of support from local businesses and residents. Social media platforms buzzed with activity as the story spread. People shared their own childhood memories of lemonade stands and similar ventures, creating a powerful narrative about youth entrepreneurship and community support. But amid the viral attention, a concerning pattern emerged. Similar incidents were being reported across the country, where children's innocent business ventures were being met with unnecessary hostility. The story took an unexpected turn when a prominent business school professor stumbled upon the viral video. She recognized an opportunity to transform this incident into a teaching moment about social justice, entrepreneurship, and community organizing. Within days, she had organized a free weekend workshop for neighborhood children, teaching them the basics of running a small business. The 3 young water vendors were invited as special guests to share their experience. Local food truck owners, remembering their own humble beginnings, began parking near the water stand during peak hours, creating an impromptu marketplace that drew even more customers to the area. The children's simple water stand had inadvertently sparked a microeconomic revival in their neighborhood, proving that even the smallest enterprises can have far-reaching effects. But not everything was smooth sailing. As their story gained traction, debates intensified online about the deeper societal issues at play. Some questioned why certain children's entrepreneurial efforts were celebrated while others were criminalized. Others pointed out how this incident reflected broader patterns of discrimination in public spaces. The conversation was becoming increasingly complex, touching on issues that went far beyond a simple water stand. Meanwhile, the woman who had called the police remained silent, despite numerous attempts by media outlets to contact her. Her absence from the narrative only added to the growing discussion about privilege and accountability in modern society. Some locals who knew her personally hinted at a possible backstory that might explain her actions, though nothing could justify the distress she had caused these young entrepreneurs. As the week progressed, the children's water stand evolved into something much more significant than anyone could have anticipated. It became a symbol of resilience, a testament to community support, and a catalyst for important conversations about social justice. But even as their story continued to unfold in unexpected ways, one question remained unanswered. How would this experience ultimately shape these young entrepreneurs' understanding of business, community, and justice? The answer would come in the most unexpected way, through a series of events that would challenge everything people thought they knew about this viral incident. A week after the incident, as the children's story continued to captivate hearts worldwide, something unexpected happened at their water stand. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and out stepped the CEO of a major beverage company. He wasn't there for publicity. He had specifically asked the media not to be present. Instead, he came with a personal story to share with the young entrepreneurs. As he bought a bottle of water from the kids, he revealed that he too had started his journey selling beverages on the street as a child. But what he said next left everyone speechless. He wasn't just there to share his story. He wanted to offer these young entrepreneurs something unprecedented, a chance to develop their own signature bottled water brand, with all profits going directly to their college funds and community development projects. The children's eyes lit up with excitement, but their mother, wise and protective, knew this was a moment that required careful consideration. She gathered her community around her, the local business owners who had supported them, the retired entrepreneur who had given them the vendor cart, and other parents from the neighborhood. Together, they helped her navigate this life-changing opportunity while ensuring the children's best interests remained at heart. Meanwhile, the story took another dramatic turn when a group of young professionals from the tech industry launched a crowdfunding campaign to support children's entrepreneurship programs in underserved communities. They named it Kids Can, inspired by these 3 young water vendors. Within days, the campaign went viral, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. The initiative wasn't just about money. It was about creating lasting change in how society supports young entrepreneurs from all backgrounds. But just as things seemed to be reaching a positive peak, tension returned to the neighborhood. The woman who had called the police that day finally broke her silence. Local residents spotted her walking toward the water stand one afternoon, causing a ripple of concern through the gathered crowd. People reached for their phones, ready to record any confrontation. The children's mother stepped forward protectively, and the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation. The crowd held its breath as she approached the stand. The children, who had shown remarkable resilience throughout this ordeal, stood their ground. They had learned valuable lessons about strength and dignity over the past weeks, and it showed in their composed demeanor. Nobody knew what would happen next. Would this be another controversial moment, or could it possibly be something else entirely? Social media was already buzzing with live updates from onlookers. The hashtag #WaterStandMoments started trending again as people around the world waited to see how this confrontation would unfold. The incident had become more than just a viral video. It had become a symbol of larger societal issues that needed addressing. The woman stood before the stand, her hands trembling slightly as she reached into her purse. The crowd inched closer, phones still recording. The children's mother stepped forward, ready to protect her kids if necessary. But what happened in the next few moments would leave everyone stunned, challenging assumptions and proving that sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected places. No one in the crowd could have predicted what was about to unfold. As the woman opened her mouth to speak, tears welling in her eyes, she pulled something from her purse that would change the entire narrative of this story. The next few minutes would not only transform the lives of everyone present, but would also provide a powerful lesson about redemption, forgiveness, and the true meaning of community. From her purse, the woman pulled out a worn photograph, a black and white image of a young girl, no more than 12, standing proudly behind a homemade lemonade stand. "This was me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 40 years ago, before everything changed." The crowd, still tense but now curious, listened as she revealed a story that would add an unexpected layer to the already complex narrative. She explained how, as a child, her own entrepreneurial dreams had been crushed when her family lost everything in a financial crisis. Her lemonade stand earnings, which she'd been saving for college, were used to help pay bills instead. The bitterness of that experience had lingered, eventually transforming into the misplaced anger they'd all witnessed that viral day. But seeing these children's success, and more importantly, the community's overwhelming support, had forced her to confront her own unresolved pain. However, just as the crowd began to soften toward her story, a local news crew arrived with breaking information. They'd uncovered a pattern. Similar incidents had been happening across the city, but with a shocking twist. It appeared that a group of real estate developers had been encouraging confrontations in certain neighborhoods, hoping to create tension that would drive property values down. The woman's actions, though still inappropriate, might have been unknowingly part of a larger scheme. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community. The children's simple water stand had accidentally exposed a complex web of neighborhood manipulation. Local business owners began coming forward with their own stories of mysterious complaints and unnecessary police calls. The plot was thickening, and the stakes were suddenly much higher than anyone had imagined. The beverage company CEO, who had remained in touch with the family, stepped back into the picture with an even more significant proposition. He suggested turning the water stand into a community cooperative, owned jointly by neighborhood families. This would protect the area from predatory development while creating opportunities for other young entrepreneurs. But this solution came with its own complications and risks. Meanwhile, the three young vendors found themselves at the center of a movement they never expected to lead. Other children from the neighborhood, inspired by their story, began approaching them for advice on starting their own small businesses. The original water stand was evolving into an unofficial mentorship program, run by kids for kids. The woman from the viral video, now seeing an opportunity for redemption, offered to share her business expertise from years of corporate experience. But some community members remained skeptical of her intentions, creating a rift in what had become a unified neighborhood movement. The children, showing wisdom beyond their years, found themselves mediating adult conflicts while trying to preserve the pure spirit of their original enterprise. As news of the real estate developers' scheme spread, larger media outlets began investigating similar patterns in other cities. What started as a simple confrontation over a water stand was unraveling into a story about community resilience, urban development, and the power of young voices in shaping neighborhood futures. The spotlight on these young entrepreneurs was growing brighter, but so were the shadows of those who preferred their community-building efforts to remain quiet. Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get more complex, an anonymous source reached out to the family with information that would shake the very foundation of everything they thought they knew about that viral day. This new revelation would force everyone involved to question their assumptions, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately decide what kind of community they wanted to build. The anonymous source turned out to be a former employee of the real estate development firm, who arrived at the water stand with a USB drive containing emails and documents. These revealed that the woman from the viral video had actually been targeted by the developers. They had deliberately pressured her with false complaints about neighborhood disturbances, manipulating her into becoming an unwitting pawn in their scheme to devalue the area. As this revelation came to light during a community meeting at the local library, the room fell silent. The woman, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stood up with tears streaming down her face. She hadn't just come to apologize. She had come with a solution. Using her corporate experience and connections, she had spent weeks gathering evidence of the developers' predatory practices across multiple neighborhoods. The children's mother, who had been hesitant about the beverage company CEO's cooperative proposal, suddenly saw an opportunity. She suggested combining the CEO's resources with the woman's evidence to create something unprecedented: a community land trust, protected by legal safeguards, where young entrepreneurs could operate without fear of displacement. The water stand would be just the beginning, but the developers weren't going down without a fight. As word of the community's plans spread, mysterious health and safety inspectors began appearing at local businesses. The pressure was mounting, and the neighborhood found itself at a crossroads. That's when the three young water vendors surprised everyone with an idea of their own. They proposed a neighborhood business fair, inviting media coverage and local officials to witness firsthand the positive impact of community-supported youth entrepreneurship. The event would make it impossible for the developers to continue their shadowy tactics in the light of public scrutiny. The children's simple suggestion demonstrated how youth voices could cut through adult complications with startling clarity. The business fair exceeded everyone's expectations. Dozens of young entrepreneurs set up stands alongside the original water vendors. The woman who had once called the police now stood proudly as a mentor, sharing her business expertise with a new generation. The beverage company CEO arrived with contracts for the community land trust, legally protecting the neighborhood's future. But the most powerful moment came when the three young water vendors took the stage. Instead of talking about their success, they invited other children from targeted neighborhoods to share their stories. One by one, young voices spoke about their dreams, their challenges, and their determination to make their communities better. The developers, faced with overwhelming public support for the children's initiative, finally backed down. The story could have ended there, with the community victorious and the children's enterprise secure. However, life had one more surprise in store. As the family celebrated at home that evening, their phone rang. On the other end was the governor's office. The children's story had inspired a new state bill protecting youth entrepreneurs and community-owned businesses. They were being invited to testify at the state capitol. Yet amid all the attention and accolades, the three young vendors never forgot their original goal: to buy science museum tickets for their family. Thanks to their persistence, they had not only achieved that modest dream but had also helped create lasting change in their community. Their water stand still operates today, not just as a business but as a symbol of what can happen when communities stand together against injustice. As the sun set on their most successful day of sales yet, the children counted their earnings with pride. But this time, they weren't just counting dollars. They were counting the smiles, the connections, and the positive changes they'd helped create in their neighborhood. Their story had transformed from a viral video into a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest actions can spark the biggest changes especially when powered by pure intentions and supported by a united community. 1 year later, the neighborhood had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The original water stand, now a permanent fixture in the community, had evolved into a weekend youth market where young entrepreneurs from across the city could showcase their businesses. The 3 children who started it all still sold water, but they had also become mentors to dozens of other kids, sharing lessons about perseverance, community support, and the power of standing up for what's right. The state bill they helped inspire, now known as the Young Entrepreneurs Protection Act, had passed with overwhelming support. Its success sparked similar legislation in other states, creating a ripple effect of positive change across the country. The children's testimony at the state capitol had been so impactful that it was now included in school curriculums as an example of youth civic engagement. The woman who had initially called the police that day found her own path to redemption. She channeled her corporate experience into creating a free business mentorship program for children from underserved communities. Her transformation from antagonist to advocate became a powerful testament to the possibility of change and the healing power of community forgiveness. The beverage company CEO kept his word. The community land trust he helped establish not only protected the neighborhood from predatory development, but also created opportunities for local families to build generational wealth. The water stand's signature brand, designed with input from the young vendors, now sat proudly on store shelves across the city, with proceeds funding educational programs and community initiatives. Perhaps most remarkably, the real estate developers' exposed scheme led to broader investigations and reforms in urban development practices. Communities nationwide began looking at the water stand movement as a model for protecting neighborhood interests and promoting youth entrepreneurship. The children's story had become a case study in how small actions could spark systemic change. The children's mother, reflecting on their journey, often smiled at how her kids' simple desire to visit a science museum had catalyzed such profound changes. That museum trip had happened months ago, but it was just the beginning. The family had since started a scholarship program helping other young entrepreneurs pursue their educational dreams. On quiet evenings, when the market closed and the crowds went home, the 3 young vendors would sometimes sit at their stand, sharing stories with new kids just starting their entrepreneurial journeys. They talked about that first day, about standing strong in the face of adversity, and about the unexpected ways their community had come together to support them. Their story continued to inspire others, not just because of its happy ending, but because it showed how ordinary people, even children, could make extraordinary changes when they refused to give up on their dreams and their community. The viral video that had once caused such pain had transformed into a powerful tool for positive change, teaching lessons about resilience, unity, and the importance of standing up for what's right. As this story spread, it reminded people everywhere that sometimes the most powerful changes start with the smallest actions, like 3 kids selling water on a hot summer day. Their journey had proved that when communities unite behind their young dreamers, anything is possible. The water stand still stands today, not just as a successful business, but as a symbol of hope, proving that with determination, support, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even the smallest voices can create the biggest changes. And so, what began as a confrontation caught on camera became a movement that continues to ripple through communities across the nation, reminding us all that every voice matters, every dream deserves support, and every community has the power to write its own story of positive change.